One. I'd like to welcome everybody back, and we're going to shake it up a bit now. And wanted to talk about, Brian, if you can share with us some of the hardships that you've had in your career and how you've overcome them.
Well, Layne, I really have not had a great hardships like other people have. I've really been quite blessed in my career. I've had a lot of people who have stepped up and helped me when they really had no reason to do so. The only one that really comes to mind to me was when I was a very young lawyer, and working at the public defender's office. I had just really reached the conclusion that this was not, being an assistant public defender was not the right career path for me. And I was looking at whether I was going to have to resign and hope to find another job, or move without having a job. And I had had an interview with the state attorney's office where I was at the time, which would have been in Manatee County, and had not gotten the job. I was very disappointed. It went to another person that I was competing with, who I knew. I was, of course, as a trial lawyer, you always feel like you're the best, and lost.
And you're great,
right? And so I, had a sort of an incident and chance encounter with someone who was very high up in the state attorney's office, and was able to convert that person to talk to them and get them to believe in me, and to believe that I was worth giving a chance as an assistant state attorney. And then he was able to go to the state attorney, who then reached out to me and said, the next time we have an opening, we will take you. And that was obviously career changing for me, and really changed the arc of my professional life. At that point, I really don't know where I would have ended up. But one of the things you learn very quickly being an assistant public defender or being an assistant state attorney is that being a person coming from a privileged background and going to the finest schools that money can buy, we really don't have the challenges in our life that many of the people that we deal with face on a day-to-day basis, and even on a lifetime basis, just based upon, who their parents were, where they were born, how, the color of their skin, things like that. I've never had challenges like that in my life. And I'm blessed because of that. I recognize it.
Yeah, thank you. And particularly, thank you for sharing those sentiments and thoughts. I wanted to ask you just a bit of a deeper dive, if I can. You talked about, you knew that being a public defender wasn't for you. And Brian, sometimes I consider public defender, state attorney to be two sides of the same coin. And when it clicks, it can be a win-win. And sure. There was something you said to me many years ago, I can share with you, that frequently a trial is a failure to communicate when a trial results,
Correct.
Right? And it's because, when it's working, when it clicks, it can be a win-win, can be a win for the defendant, get them help, right? Maybe get them treatment, if it's something that be done like that.
Or get them the least possible punishment that they're going to get from that
Absolutely.
situation.
That is appropriate, right, in that situation. Exactly right. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of ask you about the public defender. What was it that kind of made you realize that maybe your passion was to be the state attorney and not the public defender? Was there anything about the public defender job?
Well, yes. Here's the thing. I'll just put it bluntly. The people who are able to do work as a public defender in the long term are far tougher humans than I am. They are made of a different substance, because as you progress as an assistant public defender, the nature of the people and the nature of the situations that you have to confront and deal with become far, far more difficult. And it requires an ability to dissociate yourself from sort of the noise that is being pushed back at you from the situation. That noise can come from the defendant, it can come from the judge, it can come from the prosecutor, it can come from witnesses or victims who are very displeased with the work that you're doing. And it is necessary work. It's required under the Constitution of the United States. It's required by the law in Florida and in every other state. And you just have to be able to separate yourself from that and have an enjoyable life and enjoyable work. You know, nobody wants to go to a job that they hate every day. And, you know, so the ability to separate that from yourself, from your self-worth, from your enjoyment of the job is a unique and rare skill. And so the people who make it long-term in the public defender's office, they are truly rare people and who do an incredible job that I just realized after several years of being an assistant public defender, I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I had plenty of experiences with prosecutors, judges, clients that, you know, really cemented that in my mind.
Thank you. That being the case, Brian, taking it a little bit of a deeper dive here, can you tell us some war stories? Interesting. I know you have so many interesting cases that you've handled, over the years. Are there any that you can share with us?
I mean, I can share with you the story of really what was the end for me of being an assistant public defender, and what cemented the decision in my mind. Which was, I'd been in the public defender's office for several years, and I quickly moved up, and I became a lawyer at a fairly young age. I was 24 when I was barred. So I was only probably 25 by this time, maybe 26. So I'm still a pretty young lawyer. And I was assigned to the felony division of the public defender's office. And I had a case with a young woman who was charged with trafficking in cocaine. And so I had reviewed the case. I had looked at it. She comes in for her appointment, and she brings with her child. She is slightly younger than me, and she has a child who is 1 year old. Oof. And she is charged with trafficking of more than 200, less than 500 grams.
Is that a first-degree felony, Brian?
Oh, yes. And she's looking at a minimum mandatory sentence in prison of 15 years. So I have this woman in front of me. I've reviewed her file very carefully. I've done legal research. I've looked at everything I possibly have. And here's my answer for her. I cannot help you. You are going to lose whether you go to trial or whether you enter a plea. The result will be the same. You are going to be convicted of this offense. There is nothing that I can do to prevent that from happening. Factually, her husband was a commercial fisherman out of the village of Cortez, Florida, which is a commercial fishing village in Manatee County. He had found a floating duffel bag in the ocean that had 31 keys of cocaine in it, and 17 of them were still dry and saleable. And she and he had gotten together and said, hey, we're not drug dealers, but we're going to sell all this cocaine all at one time so we can get some money and help our lives, etc. They didn't know anybody in the drug trade. So the only person that she knew who had ever been involved in drugs at all was a friend of her father's. And so she contacted him and said, hey, we've got 17 keys of cocaine. Do you know anybody who might want to buy them? And he said, of course I do. And what she didn't know is that the person that was going to buy them was the FBI, because he was an informant for the government. So on the day of this incident, they are in terms of the Grateful Dead, set up like a bowling pin. And the FBI is staffed by lawyers and accountants, and they know the law better than me at this point in my career. And they have made sure it is all done exceptionally well and properly. And when the sale goes down, the sale is between her husband and the confidential informant, which is great because he went off to federal prison for the rest of his life. The problem was when they rush in at the bust and they capture her, she happens to have a little over 500 grams of cocaine in her purse. So that's not good. They have a warrant for her arrest. The search is lawful. They've got her recorded on making the deal. I mean, they've got it all. So I'm looking at this woman and I'm literally thinking, the child that you are holding in your lap will be driving before you get out of prison. And that's if I can get you the minimum. And so the only thing I had left to do was to beg, was to go to the person who was going to make the decision about what was going to happen in her case and tell them, I know you're going to win. Whether she pleads or she goes to trial does not matter. She's very young. She has a child. Please don't do this to her. So I'm sitting in his waiting room and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to this man. And I realized in that moment that I would rather be the person making the decision about what is going to happen with this woman's life than be the person who is begging. I'm not good at begging. I'm not particularly effective at it. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life begging for the lives of my clients in this particular type of situation. And I knew that the only way I was ever going to not be this person is if I changed my career path and went to the state attorney's office so that I could start my way up to the top, which is where I am now. And these are the decisions that I make now regularly, whether or not, we have people, contrary to what the world might believe, the vast majority of cases that we have, that people are clearly and plainly guilty. And we make decisions like this every day. And that's what made me want to be the one who makes this decision.
Kind of speechless after that. Thank you, Brian. That was a really compelling story about your voyage. I think I have to follow it up then with the question, maybe verboten question somewhat. What are your thoughts on the future of criminal justice? We hear a lot about criminal justice reform, and it always reminds me, that song by Waylon Jennings, it's the same old tune, fiddle and guitar. Where do we take it from here?
Yeah,
Brian,
I don't know that tune, but I hear you.
Where do we take it from
Layne,
here?
Look, at this point, I'm now 28 years into the bar, I think. And what we have learned over time is that really we ride a pendulum in the criminal justice system. That the criminal justice system swings from, for lack of a better word, very conservative policies to very liberal policies. And it sort of swings back and forth. And I think where we are, and maybe I should say progressive policies, that might be better, is that we are swinging right now towards much, much more progressive policies, towards prosecution and criminal justice. And I think that right now it's really being driven by a deeper understanding of what sort of portends criminal activity and why people engage in criminal activity, and the socioeconomic factors, the factors of race, of historical, historically disadvantaged populations, long-term racism, long-term poverty, the government actions to create long-term poverty, that we're really taking a hard look at those issues and trying to find a way forward that recognizes where we are with those issues. And I think that's where we are today. And we're also trying to incorporate the social science that's kind of driving policy-making decisions into our personal practice here, like in my office. We're looking at things like inherent internal bias, conformational bias, and trying to come up with strategies in prosecution that eliminate, or to whatever extent is possible, lessen the effects of these things that we are really now just on the tip of the iceberg of recognizing. And I think that's where we're going. And I think that's the arc we'll be on for some period of time. But like all things, there will be mistakes, and we will develop policy that we may look at in the years to come and say, that went too far. And I think that we're going to start seeing that, if we're not already seeing it, with some of our juvenile policy, that while I don't know that making a response to juvenile crime more harsh is the answer, but I don't know that what we're doing now is effective in any way towards solving any of these problems. I think that's one of the things that when the pendulum starts to swing back, often juvenile crime is it's the bellwether of when the wind changes. And right now, I think we're starting to see, especially here in Gainesville, that we are not doing a good job at all in preventing juvenile crime.
I wanted to kind of mention, because I had worked, I know, with Heather, Miss Heather Jones, and was incredible in juvenile court, and this is many, many years ago, and certainly other, individuals incredible too. But Miss Jones, it was something that I felt that was really important. There was a combination of restorative justice and what I call kind of the holistic or functional law approach, where we look symptomatically, and what we do here at Student Legal, right? Mm-hmm. And we look at we see the legal issue as arising from a deeper underlying issue, could be substance related, could be mental health, like you were talking about, the various intersectionalities, right? The social demographics, right? That are involved. And I'm so glad that you identified those. That's what I really like about your office. And, working with Miss Jones, been an incredible, I just have to put this in here, an incredible liaison with our office over the years. Can I ask you, are we doing it okay? What would you like to see from our students? You got to remember, most of our students, low-level misdemeanors, right? The MIP, sure, we call it, the underage possession of alcohol, possession of marijuana, right? For example, and those types of cases. How can we best serve our students, for example, in those cases?
Well, and I don't know that it's the role of Student Legal Services, Layne, honestly, to things that I would come up with. The inherent in the student population is a lot of risk-taking behavior. And where we really see problematic issues with the student population is in risk-taking behavior. Some of that risk-taking behavior ends up on your desk, right? I mean, drinking, drinking to excess, drinking while you're underage, this is all risk-taking behavior. But from our perspective, it's not generally the ones who are violating the law that concern us. It's the ones who are being victimized that concern us. As you mentioned correctly, it is not, while we do not ever condone any violation of Florida law, the ones that Student Legal Services handle are often and mostly the most minor ones that we see. And we simply see our role as sort of righting the ship of you have transgressed the laws of the state of Florida. We need to right that ship and hope that you have very few consequences for this minor transgression, that you learn from it, that you have served some reasonable and just punishment, and move on with your now violation-free life. But that is not really where we get concerned. Where we get concerned is that when students are victimized, and risk-taking behavior by students is the number one factor that contributes to victimization. And I don't know whether it's your role to try and convince University of Florida students to use great caution in their lives to avoid risk-taking behavior.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Brian, and say, yes, it is our role. The more outreach that I can do, right, to the student populations, and there's, as we mentioned, various intersectionalities, right, that are involved here. But our job, I believe in the future, especially, is to identify a lot of my students are medicating or self-medicating. And I'm just going to be honest, this is the reality of what we're
Sure.
dealing with. And like you talked about, it may, we can go with a plethora, right, of various substances here, that are involved. But this is the problem. And if we don't identify, and I don't go out and do the outreach, we want to be proactive, right? Not reactive. It's
Sure.
too often, and this is this is why I appreciate your office. We want to make sure that the students are protected, that the greater community is protected, right? Because that behavior, if it continues, you're right, it might only be a minor in possession, right, or underage possession of alcohol today. Tomorrow there may be a victim involved, okay, and
Correct.
something more serious. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I do believe we have a role. We could do it 24/7. Brian, sometimes I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, or it's in one ear out the other. But if we
Right.
don't deliver the message, I don't think we're
Right.
doing our job,
I,
right?
I understand. And I
Yeah.
also understand, Layne, that part of being in college, and it was when I was there, and it is now, and it will be forever. Part of being in college is exploring that part of your life where you engage in risk, what I just refer to as risk-taking behavior. You can call it whatever you want. It has a lot of names. And so we can't have an expectation that students are not going to engage in risk-taking behavior. What we could hope for is that we can increase the recognition that what you are doing is risky, and that it is very simple. It is very easy, and it doesn't decrease your fun much to put a few minor safeguards in place. And if you put those safeguards
Absolutely.
in place, you can still have a great night, but you don't end up being victimized or being injured.
Thank you.
Those type of things. And that, I think, we cannot change human nature, but we could maybe just nudge it a little enough to save a few people from really grievous injury.
Exactly right. Yeah, thank you for that.
Changing. This is one of the hardest parts of this job, Layne, is that my lawyers deal with the student population who have suffered life-changing injuries because of risk-taking behavior. And we hate it. It is one of the worst parts of the job, and we would love to see anything that could reduce it.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, and exactly what you mentioned. I know one of the strategies, and when we finish, and I know your time is very valuable here. You've gone over. There's a couple other questions I wanted to ask you. I'm going to get with your office for the next probably and ask if there's any recommendations to the next set of guests and specific strategies that we can use, okay, with our students to reduce, recidivism and keeping them. We ask that they all look out for each other when they go out, just to let you know that no person is an island, and please watch out and, have a prearranged set of signals if it's entering a dangerous situation, but let's all look out for each other. And we have found, I believe, that may be hopefully the most effective strategy, that we have right now, because there's going to be the person that they don't know their limits. They're going to have the 5 or 6 drinks, and they're 18, they haven't really done it yet, and they're testing boundaries. And we want to make sure that they have that support network, in place, and hopefully with them. And then,
Right. Or, we do not let our friends who are intoxicated be alone. Ever. No one who is highly intoxicated should ever be left alone. They shouldn't be allowed to be sleeping or passed out without supervision. They should not be walking, in the city without supervision. They should not be in a bar without supervision. They shouldn't be in a social situation without supervision. Of course, we see it from a different perspective. We look at this person as somebody who is now suffering under a disability.
Yes. Yes.
And students don't look at it that way, especially if the people who should be looking out for them are also drinking, or taking drugs or self-medicating in some other way.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you, Brian. I know that the David Frost or his ghost is going to come after me here. I violated every single rule by interjecting, and probably I'm trying to give you our ideas of what we're doing here, when really my job is to interview you about your office. Can I ask you any special inspirations you'd like to share with our students? You've mentioned already a lot. Are there any more inspirations that you have? You talked about it. You couldn't be where you're at without the influence and the mentors, right?
I don't know, Layne. That's an interesting question. Obviously looking to have people in your life who help you and love you and want great things for you. That is what makes life wonderful. So finding those people and treating them well and incorporating them into your life, that's what you need to do. That's what I have done. And I've been very, very fortunate. As you noted, I have Heather Jones, who helps me every day to get through this difficult job. I have wonderful parents, and I had Mr. Savone, who lifted me up and identified me and then mentored me and helped me become what I am. And you can't really do it in this life if you don't have people like that around you. So finding them and treating them well is the best thing I can recommend to people.
Thank you. Yeah. Getting that team, if you're part of a wonderful team, right? Stick with it. Achieving a work-home life balance. This is something I've always admired from you, Brian. You know that the work will be there tomorrow. You know when to walk away. Certainly you have a wonderful family. And can I ask you how you achieve that work-home life balance? Or is it doable as a state attorney?
Oh, sure. Well, it's doable as a state attorney more so than it is in any other job in the law. Maybe I would say that most legal jobs that people get, they don't afford that and they don't care about that. They want you to make them money. That is what being a lawyer is about. For most lawyers, it is we're making money for other people. We don't make any money. We spend money here at the state attorney's office. But philosophically, I think the first step, Layne, is philosophically, you have to decide whether you're going to live to work or work to live. And I have always been one who works to live. First and foremost, I'm a lawyer. I have represented many people, many different types of people in many different types of situations. Today, I am the lawyer for the people of the state of Florida, specifically the people of the Eighth Judicial Circuit. I love this job. I have always loved doing it. But someday I may be a lawyer for somebody else. I have been a lawyer for somebody else before, and there may be a day that will come that I will be a lawyer for somebody else again. And recognizing that while it is the best job that I have ever had, it is just a job. It can come and go tomorrow. Life will go on.
Thank you. Wow. Can you keep reminding me, Brian? You're talking about, you're talking to a type A OCD personality. And what you were talking about, working to live as opposing living to work, right? Please keep reminding me of that. I worry we get unidimensional and we get so associated with our job or careers, and we're much more than that, right? I think is what you're telling us here.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to enjoy, you only get to go around once, right? I mean, if you want to enjoy the time that you have, it is a much better philosophy that you work to live than you live to work. And you'll spend your whole time on this earth just doing a job. And to me, there's so much more in the world to enjoy. People like you have friends, to have people who are, who you get to enjoy the richness of the relationships that you have. But if all you do is work, all you get to enjoy is whatever you get out of working.
Thank you for that. I'm going to write that down. Okay. That's so important. The advice here. I know it sounds crazy. It's like muscle memory. If you don't think about it every day, right? You forget it, and you get too involved, in it. I'm looking at the time here. I know we only have a couple of minutes. Favorite, I'm going to throw all this and just let you run with it. Favorite music, films, or books, Brian, whatever you want to share with us.
Well, films, I'm a child of the 80s. So I often find myself saying, I will just stop and watch a few minutes of The Breakfast Club.
Oh, John
And
Hughes,
then,
absolutely.
and then an hour later or an hour and a half later, depending on where I found it, I am watching, what was his name? Judge Hirsch walk away with his fist in the air across
Yeah,
the,
that wonderful ending silhouette. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I love The Breakfast Club.
Molly and the
Oh,
Rat
yeah.
Pack.
And of course, again, Ferris Bueller's Day Off was huge in my day. Loved that movie so much.
Absolutely.
Band wise, I really was a child of the 90s musically more so. I mean, I had, of course, a heavy metal period like every teenage boy does. But unfortunately, in my era, it was hair bands. So, that didn't last.
Absolutely. Hair bands and spandex.
Yeah, I still listen to the Counting Crows. August and Everything After was one of the best albums I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Still listen to it. Love it. Love every song on it. So yeah, I love the Counting Crows. And what was the other one? Books.
Yeah.
Books. That's a tough one. I don't read books of any quality or substance.
I hear that from a lot. No, Brian, you're so busy, and I hear that. I'm the same way. I finish like a couple, 2 or 3 pages a night, fall asleep. Yeah. And it's a wonderful way for me, right?
Yeah, books to me are a diversion. A lot of people look at them as another form of education or expansion of your mind, those type of things. To me, they are like going to the movies. They're not really I read enough every day of things that are meant for my sort of work life that if I'm going to take the time to read a book, it's going to be science fiction, probably of some sort. There's a book called A King of Infinite Space that I read many years ago that was excellent. There's a same person wrote it. It's a different book. There's a book called Snow Crash that I read many years ago. That was one of the best science fiction books I've ever.
You remember many years ago, you loaned me Shogun. The book, this huge paperback that I think I broke it, Brian.
Fiction is plain. That's not science fiction. It's just regular fiction.
Yeah, or historical fiction.
Yeah, historical fiction. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I love those books.
Brian, it's so much fun talking to you. You're so eclectic. I remember you knew about Japanese, culture. You knew about, around the world. The whole reason I do these interviews is just to get a good book, movie, music list. And you've certainly given me that. So thank you very much. I'm writing, all of this down. This is the whole reason we do these hour, plus interviews is for that.
If you spend a weekend watching The Breakfast Club, reading Snow Crash, and listening to August and Everything After, you will have pretty much gotten me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. It's a delicate situation. No bad blood there, Brian. Let me ask you real quick, moving into, real quick while I got you, I see you as Emilio Estevez more than I see you as, was it Judge Hirsch? Is that right?
In the movie?
Yeah.
In that movie?
Have you taken the quiz yet?
No, I would be Brian in the movie. Wasn't that his name?
Which one is?
He's the nerd.
Oh, he's really pumped up though now, right? I think the individual, the actor.
It's Anthony
Michael Hall. Yes.
And his name in the movie was Brian, I believe.
Brian. Very introverted, right?
Yeah, he was kind of a nerd.
Brian, I don't see. I'm sorry.
If we only have 5 male characters to pick from in the movie, if I remember correctly, and there is none of them that will come close to me other than him.
I feel bad, and Ms. Jones, I know who's there with you. I'm thinking, and I have to go with Heather. I have to go with Molly Ringwald just because I don't see you as Ali Sheedy, right?
No, I was not Ali Sheedy. That was more. Yeah, I would have been way more Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In a very good way.
For all of her eccentricities, Miss Jones does not come close to the character played by Ali Sheedy in that movie. Remember, ultimately, she says, "Do you know why I'm here?" She has nowhere else to be, and Heather Jones clearly has somewhere else to be.
Jungian shadow selves, right? That is a wonderful, infinitely deep movie, right? Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. You've said words, but I know they are English. I do not know what they mean when they are put together in that order.
So we can spend another hour. We're going to do this 1 minute, Brian. Any last closing thoughts, a piece of deathbed advice you'd like to leave our students with?
Deathbed.
Oh, well,
Please
we
not
don't have to go
have
that
any
dark.
students. I don't want any students on their deathbed.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, we call it deathbed advice,
All
but let me back
All
it up. Sickbed advice. No, let's even go,
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah.
What is there one piece of advice you'd like to give our pre-law students, in particular, law students?
Well, I don't know if I have any advice that, Layne, all I would reflect is to say that if you in your life have done well enough to make it to the University of Florida, to be a student at the University of Florida, you have the chance to do and accomplish incredible things in this world that the vast majority of the world will not have the opportunity to accomplish, simply because you have attended the University of Florida. And you should take advantage of that, because it will serve you well in this life. It serves me well every day.
Thank you for that. I get the pleasure of attending the University of Florida each and every day. I know you said you didn't have any advice. I've got pages of notes here, Brian, of all your wonderful advice. I know time is running so short. You have been so gracious sharing your time and thoughts with us today. I just want to thank you so much for talking to me. And again, anything that our office can do, we'll cut it off here, and I will certainly talk to you and Ms. Jones afterwards. Thank you again.
It's been great, Layne. It's always great to see you.
Thank you, sir.